John Hammond, and I'm delighted to meet you.
Okay, who's the jerk?
Dennis, our lives are in your hands, and you have butterfingers.
Dodson, we've got Dodson here!
It's almost there, boy. Relax. Try and enjoy yourself.
I think this was Gennaro.
I think this was too.
Alex, listen.
Alejandro's prepared a delightful menu for us. Chilean sea bass, I believe.
Remind me to thank John for a lovely weekend.
Ian?
You'll have to get used to Dr. Malcolm.
Robert Muldoon, my game wardens in Kenya.
Mr. Hammond, I think we're back in business.
Hey guys, and welcome back to Jurassic Park REC, your dose of Jurassic fandom in audio bites. I'm joined here by the lovely Tom Fishenden. How are you doing, Tom?
Hey, yeah, I'm really good, man. It's good being back doing this. It feels like it's been a hot minute since we've done it, so I'm excited to kind of dive into everything that we've been up to.
Yeah, I apologise. I've been out of the loop for a little bit and just life has taken over, and you've been doing some fantastic work on the channel. If you haven't seen the content, guys, check out the links down below. We've got loads of new content on the channel, and Tom has been doing a fabulous job recently reviewing the Amber collection.
Yeah, so we have just debuted. At the time of recording this, it is a Tuesday. So yesterday, the Ian Malcolm review for the Amber collection went up. Really cool seeing the first human figure from Mattel in that collection, kind of getting an idea of how much more articulation they're going to pack into the new collection, but then where it really shines, and I'm sure you guys will have seen the teaser photo I put on social media of the raptor in the sun. That Velociraptor is an absolutely incredible figure, so I'm really, really excited to take a look at that and break it down. I've got to work out when I'm going to put that review up, but you might see it later this week, so just stay tuned and keep your eyes peeled, and we'll get that up when we can.
Awesome. And actually, by the time this podcast goes live, it might already be uploaded, so
Yeah.
go and check it out. Check out all the latest uploads, because there's loads going on. There's also the Legacy Collection, the Lost World Rex and Baby Rex, which was a fantastic review again. We've got the Vice Press print, the Jurassic Park print that's just come out today, Tuesday, when we're recording this. So there's loads of cool reviews on the channel at the moment. How's your collecting going on, Tom?
It's good, yeah. So obviously I got the Amber collection, which is really exciting because they're not actually out in the UK yet. So getting my hands on them early has been really cool, and it's kind of got me. Yeah, it's got me really excited for what they're doing in the future of the line. So we know that Owen and Blue are coming. We know that I think it's either Delta or Charlie, one of the two Raptor Squad members, is coming with an accessory of the camera that wraps around their heads.
Oh,
and then,
really? Okay.
Yeah, I'll have to send you the photos. They dropped a while back. And then they've also been teasing quite heavily that one of the future additions to the line is going to be Nedry and the Dilophosaur. So Nedry's going to come with like the stick, he's going to have the raincoat, everything like that. So I'm excited to see where this line's going to go. It's kind of piqued my interest.
Yeah, and mine. Wow. I mean, it's great that they're investing in the legacy stuff and doing I think some people have problems with the fact that they're going for a different scale to the rest of the line, so they're not compatible. But I kind of feel like this is like the Black series of the Jurassic Park world, which I think works really well. And if they are doing a Dilophosaurus set, that's fantastic. There was also talk of did someone mention a Triceratops, or am I hearing that wrong?
Yeah, there's some talk that a Triceratops might be coming. I don't know.
Okay.
I think it's all quite kind of speculative at the moment, because obviously doing something at that scale, it'll be interesting to see what kind of price bracket it fits into.
And I guess at that scale, it might fit with the Legacy Brachiosaurus.
Possibly. I mean, yeah, the dimensions would all be a bit kind of screwed out, to be honest. Yeah, but I was going to say, on the subject of scale, and obviously the Brachiosaurus, I managed to get my hands on one recently because it was down to £35 at Argos.
That is a bargain.
Yeah, it's really, really good. It's massive. It's on top of my display unit where I've got all my Jurassic stuff, and also the Infinity from Halo, if anyone knows that spaceship.
Oh, awesome.
So it stood behind the Infinity, towering over it, and it's a really, really cool figure. And I really love the packaging for that one, especially as well, because it's got the lovely blue and red Legacy Collection colour scheme. And then a beautiful kind of painted rendition of the sequence where they get introduced to the Brachiosaur in Jurassic Park. So it's really
nice.
Cool. Yeah.
So that was, how much was that? £35?
Yeah, £35. I think it's possibly still sale at the moment. Let's do a little bit of
Okay, so
research.
that's on Argos. So if you're in the UK, check out Argos, or keep your eye on Argos, because you might be able to get the Legacy Brachiosaurus at a really decent price. Now, the other one you hunted down that really impressed me was the Legacy Tyrannosaurus Rex and Baby Rex. You found that on Amazon. How much was that?
Okay, so that was £30 on Amazon, which is pretty good because it's kind of
really
the exact
good.
retail price. So if you think about it, it's the Extreme Chomping Rex repainted, which is a £20 figure, and then it's a repaint of the Baby Velociraptor from the first wave of the Legacy Collection single card backs. So that, again, a £10 figure. So it's right around that price point. And again, the packaging with that one, you have seen in the video, it looks absolutely beautiful in the box. It was really hard actually opening that one. And yeah, it's just nice because obviously, unfortunately, I'm not sure how much you're familiar with what's happening with the Legacy Collection line, JC, but it's kind of whittled down at the moment. So there were a lot of problems with the people who were carrying it. I think it was Target in the US. So we were meant to get a Jurassic Park 3 Velociraptor in the accurate colour scheme, and also a Jurassic Park Dilophosaurus. Both of those never came to fruition because that wave never got picked up by retailers.
Oh no!
So
I saw the Jurassic Park 3 Raptor with Alan, which was like an exclusive in certain parts of the world.
That was another part of the Legacy Collection. It was never meant to be an exclusive like that, but it just ended up getting a really botched release. So I think it ended up in Mexico and Chile, and that was it.
It's really strange. But what's weird though is that, like, I've been following the releases of the Legacy stuff, and when the Legacy The Lost World Rex came up, it was like US only, and I was actually seriously considering importing it into the UK because I just couldn't see any other way to get this Lost World variant of the T-Rex from the Legacy collection. And now here it is in the UK at Argos, not at Argos, at Amazon.co.uk, getting confused.
Yeah.
Now here it is at Amazon, and it's being sold at retail price. So I don't know if these things are just taking a long time to trickle.
I think it's worth noting with this one, as far as I'm aware, I think I'm logged in so I can double check my order history. I'm not. Let me just do a quick search.
We're live.
Fairly sure, yeah. Oh wow, okay, so I didn't think that this one was through an official retailer, but it looks like it's through the official Jurassic World account, so maybe it has just taken a while to pop up. And it is worth noting, at the time of recording this, it is down to £25.93 with free same-day delivery if you've got Prime.
Okay, I am actually going to go and order this after the podcast. I mean, this is just getting silly now.
Yeah.
It's just taunting me with its cheapness. I just can't believe that. I mean, this sort of reminds me of the way that Jurassic Park, the original old school toy line, was handled. This is the way it happened in the UK. I mean, I completely missed Series 2. I don't even know if we even got Series 2. But when The Lost World came out here in the UK, there was like a Series 2 of The Lost World. We didn't get that either. But then for some reason, really late on, like 1998, I want to say, the Series 2 stuff started turning up in Argos at discount prices. And I got I think it was like the Hunter set, which came with 2 strange dinosaurs. It's really rare now. It's a box set. But that was something that you picked up in Argos at a discount price later on. So I don't know if this is still going on all these years later, this kind of slow process of getting what the US doesn't want or something, excess stock. I don't know. But yeah, it does seem very strange the way they're handling it.
I was going to say, and I know obviously we've got other topics we want to move on to shortly, but it is worth noting on Amazon at the moment as well, the Indominus Rex is down to £27.20. And as well as that, the Savage Strike Plesiosaurus, which has been a hot product that's been quite hard to find, has been popping up at Smith's across the country as well. So that's kind of where Mattel is at the moment.
That's amazing. I actually went through my Legacy collection stuff. I've got quite a lot building up now because I've picked up all the human characters. I picked up the T-Rex. I've picked up the Jeep. And I've got the box set with Alan Grant and all the various dinosaurs.
Oh, nice.
With the Dilophosaur in the accurate
Yeah,
colour. So I've
I
got
always
quite a lot
wanted
of
to
the
pick
Legacy
that one up,
collection.
but that was an import job as well, wasn't it? 'Cause it never
It
came
was an
out here,
import
which was
job, yeah.
frustrating, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that was really, really pleased to have so much from the Legacy collection. I don't know if I've got room for the Brachiosaurus, and I can't really justify it because I've got the Horizon Brach, which is like, the same size and similar level of detail. So if I had 2 Brachs, I think my wife would kill me. But
It's alright. I'm sure you can hide one somewhere. Like pop it out in the garden behind a bush or something.
That's a good idea. Although me as a collector, I'd worry about the UV light damage.
Yeah.
And people like, no, I'm sorry, I can't leave it out for more than a day. I could track the movement of the sun and actually make sure that it permanently stays in a pool of shadow, like just all day monitoring its UV progress. Yeah, I think that's a good way to go. So swiftly moving on to today's big topic, we want to talk about future wars and past wars, because 2 big tentpole franchise films and shows are coming up, and we've had a sneak peek at both of them. You haven't seen one of them. You've seen War of the Worlds. That's what we want to talk about first. War of the Worlds, the BBC adaptation. It stars Eleanor, Tomlinson, Robert Carlyle and Rafe Spall. It's coming out this Sunday, you say?
Yeah.
And the problem is the way they've distributed this. It always comes down to distribution, doesn't it? But the way they've distributed this has been a bit wonky. They've released it in Canada and other parts of the world ahead of its release on the BBC, which you think, it being a BBC show, it would get released on the BBC first. And that's got quite a few War of the Worlds fans kind of riled up. And
there's been a lot of frustration about it. There's been a lot of memes made, to be honest with you, over the release date.
Oh, I'm
and
gonna have to check
people
those out.
saying, the BBC still haven't announced the release date.
Oh gosh, yeah. Me and you have managed to have a sneak peek of the entire thing.
Yeah,
and it's impressive.
It is. It's good. I don't really want to go too much into spoiler talk because obviously it's out on Sunday and I want people listening to get to experience it. But I think it's an interesting adaptation of the source material. So for me personally, I've grown up with Jeff Wayne's adaptation of it, the musical adaptation, which I think is the most popular adaptation of the source material currently. And it's interesting seeing where that has quite a few parallels, but equally where it deviates. And especially in the second half, it really becomes a completely different story.
Absolutely.
And because of that, it does some interesting stuff, but equally there's stuff from the novel which is missed out and I wish was in here. And one thing I will spoil slightly, because obviously there will be people listening who are fans of the novel and fans of Jeff Wayne. Unfortunately, we don't get any artilleryman this time, and that was one kind of big takeaway for me, because I always look forward to that sequence and that part of the novel, so not seeing that turn up was a little bit disappointing, but it does go in an interesting different direction.
Can you remind me of the artilleryman and his
role
in the...
So the artilleryman, shortly after the events in the novel with Pastor Nathaniel, when the journalist escapes and heads back to London, he finds the artilleryman on one of the commons, and he takes him back to his base of operations and explains to him how he's going to build a network underground and people can live underground. And he kind of takes the form of the idealistic dreamer who's not really seeing the situation for what it is, but is imagining what it could be.
Yes, so that's the part that's in the Spielberg version as well.
Yeah, well, no, it's really different in the Spielberg version, if I remember correctly. It's a really weird guy.
I want the guy from Shawshank Redemption. I'm forgetting the actor's name, forgive me, but he plays that kind of lunatic who's talking about getting up underneath them and destroying them that way. So that rings a bell with the Spielberg version as well. So in terms of the format, how long is it and how is it split up?
Okay, so in terms of the way it's going to release, we watched it in 2 1.5-hour sittings, but it's going to actually release as 3 hour-long episodes, I believe.
Okay, cool.
It'll be interesting to see if they follow that format or if it ends up being 2 1.5-hour episodes. But I imagine it's going to be 3, just because, like you saw, they've done an entire title sequence and everything for it. So it would make sense for it to be released in kind of like a serialized format.
It's interesting because it's set in Edwardian England, and the main characters are George and Amy. So that's Rafe Spall and Eleanor Tomlinson. You may know her from oh no, I've forgotten the name of it now. She's in a really famous BBC show that she's known for, Poldark, and I really like it. I feel like it's a very modern retelling, but set nicely in the past in the way that BBC really is good at executing a period drama. BBC kind of excels at that sort of stuff. So it feels right that they set it in Edwardian England, and I at the same time it feels like a combination of Steven Spielberg's version, but set in Edwardian England. It's a bit like a combination of the two.
I think that's a really good parallel to draw. It's interesting as well because it's not actually set at the accurate time of the novel.
Right.
So Jeff Wayne's is the closest, and you can kind of tell by the military equipment that they use, because in the novels it's things like sappers with red coats on, so it's back kind of towards I'd say like the middle of the Edwardian era, where it's still quite Victorian equipment, whereas in this one they actually confirmed it is set in 1905 in this particular adaptation, so it's got obviously a lot more parallels with World War One and building up to the Great War, that kind of stuff. Right,
okay, interesting. And Robert Carlyle plays this sort of scientist character who's actually Ogilvy. And is he in the original War of the Worlds script? Is he from the original story?
He is. He's in the original. He's also in the musical version.
Okay.
But the way that he's used in the original is very different, so I won't say any more than that. Okay.
I liked him as a character. He's very sympathetic and very kind of kind and patient, and comes through as almost like the sharp mind in all of this. Like while the chaos is going on, he's the only one who's kind of seeing through it. It plays on interesting themes of faith versus science in a way that in the past has favoured probably faith. This film, I think, is more favouring science, I have to say. And I think in the 1953, I want to say, version of War of the Worlds, the film, which I grew up watching and really loved.
Is this the one with the floating Martians?
Yes, with the floating tripods. That is so. I say tripods. They haven't really got any tripods. So, but they're really the saucer Martians. For me, that's the War of the Worlds I grew up with. But at the end, there is very much a sort of reinforcing faith. It's kind of like God in his wisdom did this, and I think they're all in a church at the end when all the stuff goes on outside. So it's kind of reinforcing faith, which is kind of suitable for the time. But this one seems to have a bit more of a debate in the show about faith versus science, and it's a cool debate. Neither is really obscured, but well, I don't know. You could say the faith is obscured, but it's just an interesting argument, I thought, and an interesting theme to bring up for a modern audience. That's something that I don't think Spielberg really tackled. He didn't really deal with that side of the story.
His was very much a blockbuster. It's interesting because a lot of fans don't like it because it deviates pretty far from the original novel. But I think that, to be honest, Spielberg's retelling is an interesting version in the sense that it captures the idea that, obviously, as a species... So one line that always sticks with me from the latest Jeff Wayne version, which is a massive audiobook, is George talking about the Martians arriving, and he says, what would the dodos have thought when sailors arrived on their island? Wow. And I think that kind of idea of the dominant species and whoever has like the most power is the person who's in control is particularly prevalent in Spielberg's version, because obviously it's a modern day world where we think we're the dominating force, and then suddenly this force from outer space shows up and you literally get things like planes falling out the sky to show how inferior we are in the grand scheme of things. So I think it does that side of it very nicely.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's really well done, and I feel like if Spielberg had kind of set his film in the Edwardian, England setting, it might have ended up something like this, because it's very well paced. The characters are nicely developed, I thought. It has a similar bleakness to it, I thought, that a bit like Spielberg's version, where it's just sudden, and it's very bleak. It does have a big twist, and I won't talk about what that is, but you start to see these scenes interspersed in the story, and you realise that this is going somewhere it hasn't gone before. In terms of the aftermath of War of the Worlds. And I found that quite unique and quite innovative. I thought it was a nice way to go, to kind of talk about the aftermath of War of the Worlds and where they were going afterwards. So yeah, you'll see it when you see the show, but I thought that was a nice, unique part to this show. Now, the tripods, you've probably seen them in the trailer. You've got these big machine-like tripods. I felt like the cinematography was almost similar to Steven Spielberg's version, actually, and even the movement was similar to Steven Spielberg's version, but they've just got a new design, essentially. It's
interesting because the way they move is modelled slightly on the tripod model that's actually it's either Horse or Woking, wherever H.G. Wells was from. There's a statue of a tripod from War of the Worlds, and its legs kind of twist round as it moves in the similar fashion to the ones in this show, which was quite nice.
Oh, that's a nice touch. I didn't realise that. There was some stuff where, like, you have like characters in the foreground, and then you just have like these really fogged out limbs in the background, very sort of J.J. Abrams-esque, but also reminiscent of shots in Spielberg's War of the Worlds, where you really get a feel for the kind of size, dimension of these things. The legs are fogged out by the environment, and they're so far off in the background, but yet they're still so huge. And I always love it when they do that in the film, because it feels realistic. But there's also shots where they're kind of coming up from the ground, and they sort of look down at the characters. That for me felt very much like that scene with Tom Cruise in the street where the
when they first arrive.
Very similar. So I can see they borrowed kind of stuff that worked from Spielberg's take, and I like that. It doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel too much of a rip-off. There's one scene on a beach where there's a wonderful sequence, and I just think it's a nice mix of drama and spectacle. They don't focus too much on the tripods. There's a nice feeling of the conflict between the characters and where they're going and trying to find each other. I felt that there was enough drama mixed with the spectacle that it actually made it more entertaining than if it was just the spectacle of the aliens attacking.
It's interesting that you bring up that beach scene, though, because again, I don't want to spoil it too much, but there's another big scene from the novel and from the other adaptations which should have taken place there, but doesn't. So that annoyed a lot of fans, because it's kind of like the big set piece from the novel that everyone looks forward to, and in the musical it's one of the most popular songs, and they just chose to alleviate it completely.
I think you can go ahead and say what that is.
Yeah.
What
so
what
it's
happens
the sequence with Thunderchild. So in the original novel and also the musical, one of the British Empire's ironclads from the Channel Fleet comes over as they're evacuating, and it tries to defend the boats as they're going out into the channel. So you get this really dramatic sequence where the boat guns down one of the tripods, because they're all just standing there watching it because they have no idea what this thing approaching them is. And then it gets coated in black smoke as it's coming through the water. It takes out another one of the tripods and then kind of rams into the third one, and everything blows up. And then after that, there's just kind of like smoke and steam and everything across the water, and Thunderchild obviously destroys itself, but in doing so, it saves the people who are trying to escape. And it's interesting because in the original source material, especially in the musical version, there's nothing about kind of divorce and marriage and separate relationships. It's all Carrie and George who are the couple in it, and Carrie is actually on a steamer at a beach. Well, in the other adaptions it's more a port than anything, and she escapes across the channel, so she gets away from everything that's going on, and it's only George who's left in the Martian infested country. So you can kind of see there where the story begins to deviate again.
Right. Yeah, there is a focus on the relationship between Eleanor Tomlinson, Skerritt, and Rafe Spall, and they bring it into a modern dimension by the fact that she is from a previous marriage and how controversial that is at the time. I think it adds a little bit of emotional tension to Rafe Spall's relationship with his brother. I think that's quite good. I think it's effective. I think the thing is, BBC has basically mixed period drama with War of the Worlds, and I feel like they always nail period drama. Like, it just feels engaging and real. So whatever they want to do in that kind of context, I'm happy with them to kind of expand on that. But I can understand, especially with what you're saying on the beach scene, how that's a major plot point from the original that's left out. So I can see why that would be problematic. One of the other things I wanted to talk about was how dark it gets later on as the show progresses. I don't want to get into spoilers too much, but it does get quite dark in terms of the alien invasion. And I felt that the alien invasion was handled better probably than Steven Spielberg's version initially. I think we've talked about the visual effects briefly, but the visual effects seem to get a little bit ropey towards the end.
They do. It's interesting how you're saying it's handled better than Steven Spielberg version, because again, it's something where it deviates a lot from the original story. So in the original story, you actually have a lot more sequences of London getting destroyed as well. So there's things like the heat ray, for example, getting used to destroy things. So when you just get the tripod coming in and it's all black smoke and nothing else, it felt very different as well. So it's interesting because I kind of feel like you get that one sequence where George is at the church as he's trying to get into London and he sees the tripods moving to and from, kind of destroying things. But I wish there was a lot more of that in it as well. Just because I think for fans of the original adaptation, and especially the Jeff Wayne adaptation, they really want to see tripods going at it, destroying things, and I think there's maybe 5 minutes of screen time for the tripods, if that, in total.
That's true. You don't see much of the tripods. That is a good. Well, I say you see. I mean, I felt like I saw enough to realise that there was a presence there, and you saw them in their entirety enough. Yeah. I guess in terms of the later invasion, where maybe we see what's driving these things, I felt that aspect was handled in a very dark way and in a very obscured way, like you don't see stuff, and I felt that was really masterful. That felt like Spielberg, the way Spielberg handles the raptors in Jurassic Park, for example, where less is more.
Definitely.
That I really appreciated. It does go on a bit, and I felt like it got worse the more you saw of that stuff. It's like the third act is probably where it suffers most, but at the same time you want to see the resolution because of some unknowns about after the battle of the War of the Worlds. So you're hanging on for a resolution in that part, and yet you're stuck in this present where there's a lot that you're seeing that you don't really need to see. That's the only part I felt was suffered, but I felt the first two acts, it quite often happens with film and TV shows where the first two acts are the real kind of like exciting, stuff that really gets you into it, and then the third act somehow lets you down a little bit.
It is worth noting that I was going to say there's another version coming out very soon as well by Fox. Which is going to be an 8-parter, but that is, I think it's debuted in France already because it was a joint project between like English and French film companies. That one's going to be very different, where it's more Invasion of the Body Snatchers than War of the Worlds, but they're just using the War of the Worlds title. And I've heard some whisperings that there is a third adaptation coming that has been trying to get even more authentic. Because Horsell Common was actually closed a few weeks back for some filming, so It'll be interesting
wow.
to see
Another
if
one.
that ends up. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if that ends up coming to fruition.
Cool. So this one's, I mean, on IMDb at the moment, this one's 5.4 out of 10, so it's not doing great. But
No,
I mean,
yeah.
I don't know if that's due to people not being able to, to see it. And people are kind of maybe doing a protest vote. I don't know. But yeah, it's. Did they explain why they distributed in the rest of the world and not on the BBC first?
No, the BBC were really silent about it all, to be honest with you. I mean,
Okay.
I think it was yesterday their media pack for it only just went up on their website, so it's
Right.
been very, very poorly handled. Obviously, as we were saying, the further you get into it, unfortunately, the more strained the VFX becomes, and it's quite clear that the budget was getting to a point where they just kind of had to wrap it up. And I know that this project suffered a lot in post-production, which is why it kept getting delayed.
Right.
And, seeing the final product even, you can kind of tell that. So I wonder
Yes.
if perhaps the BBC are conscious of that, and that's why they've not been pushing it as much as they could be.
Yeah,
but
maybe.
it will just be interesting to see what ends up happening with it and what the general reception is, because obviously, I mean, I'm a diehard fan. I've grown up with this story since I was a kid, so I'll be interested to see what just the general public think, who are used to BBC doing quite good drama, and whether it gets good reception or not.
It's the type of thing you could, if you didn't know what it was and you caught it in the middle of it, you might think, oh, this is a nice period drama with Rafe, Spall and Eleanor Tomlinson, and then like all of a sudden
Yeah.
it changes into
Where
it is
did
that
these
sort of
aliens come
thing.
from?
And that, I think in a way that suits the Sunday evening audience here in the UK when, after roast dinner and everyone sat down enjoying their Sunday evening TV. It's the type of thing I think that people will tune into, and I think it's suitable for the audience of that time of the evening on a Sunday. But yeah, that's cool. So War of the Worlds, let us know in the comments down below if you've seen it televised or anywhere else, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on the new BBC version of War of the Worlds. So moving swiftly on to another War of the World, then that's the future war depicted in the new Terminator Dark Fate. Now,
Dun, 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 dun.
yeah, no, I'm a Terminator fan. I grew up watching Terminator 1 and 2, and they've been huge films in terms of, me in my childhood. They were like, you had Back to the Future, you had Terminator, you had Jurassic Park, and you had Star Wars. It was up there.
Yeah.
And over the years, they've had, loads of sequels. They've had Rise of the Machines, Terminator 3. They had, was it Terminator Salvation after that?
Yep.
And then Terminator Genesis.
Yep.
Now, I went to see Dark Fate at the weekend, and I was blown away, to be honest. I was really impressed with the quality of the film, and it's tanking in the box office. It's not doing well at all. And I don't know, I mean, I've had time to think about it now, but I don't know if it's because the ideas are suffering from fatigue in that people have seen so much of Terminator now that they don't have the patience to watch a Terminator film that will go back to basics, which is what this one does. It goes back to the heart of what Terminator was and feels like, a proper sequel, and it makes quite a controversial choice right at the start of the film. It decides to be a sequel to Terminator 2. Now I won't go into the finer points, but
It's
it
alright,
decides
I know
to.
exactly what happens at the start, because I've seen
so
a lot of videos
I don't want to
of
spoil it because it's a big plot point, but essentially it carries on from Terminator 2. Now, for me, that's a cool idea. It doesn't conflict with what's already been. It's just, for me, it feels almost like an alternate timeline that we're going on, and the payoff of having original Sarah Connor for me in this film is huge. Like, she turns up on the scene and I was like almost moved to tears when it happened, because I was just like, oh my god, this feels like I'm watching a real sequel to Terminator 2 finally. And I don't know, I can imagine people who are watching this who've watched Terminator Salvation and Genesis are thinking, what? The story has gone this way now, like this is confusing, and now we're doing this similar plot points but in another film just done better. So I can see why people might not enjoy it, but I just went with it. And the film was fantastic. There are a few things I'd tweak about it, but just the kind of the grit of the film, the tone of the film was accurate to Terminator 2. It even had moments of humour that felt like Terminator 2. And there are parts when I thought, oh, this is strange, this is new. And it's just because, you know, it's different to Terminator 2. But actually the new stuff, the new plot points that they bring in, I'm like, actually, yeah, that was actually grounded in Terminator 2. There are hints of that in Terminator 2. So this does actually feel like an evolution of particularly that film. So yeah, I really loved it, and I'd recommend people to go and see it. There's bits where the visual effects I feel like could be improved. But in terms of the story, which is the most important part, I really enjoyed it. And I know I'm enjoying a Terminator movie because I'm really reveling when they're defeating the bad guy. You know, I'm really like in the moment.
Yeah.
And I'm like, come on, get him. You know, like that's when I know I'm enjoying a Terminator movie, because I was the same way with the T-1000 when I was watching Terminator 2. There's some new ideas brought into the fold as well. Essentially, it's almost like a new timeline where Judgment Day was stopped, but in this new timeline there's essentially technology carried on and artificial intelligence was made anyway, and then a future war happened again, but just a bit later. Which to me feels like, yeah, that feels about right. It's like a logical thing. Like, if Jurassic Park didn't come out in 1993, give it 10 or 15 years, something like Jurassic Park would have come along.
Yeah.
And technology would have, you know, kind of made that happen. And it feels like a natural storyline, but I can understand why people might feel like, well, this isn't the same Terminator, this is a new story. But it works, it really works. The actual Terminator baddie, I think maybe could feel like recycled ideas. He's essentially like a liquid metal Terminator, but with an endoskeleton in the middle.
Yeah, and he can like split into two, can't he?
He can split into two, which is cool. It works.
I was looking forward to it because he's played by Gabriel Luna, who played Ghost Rider in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and he was really good in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Right.
Yeah, he is. He's good. He is good. And actually, I think the reason why he's good is he's softly spoken and quite sympathetic.
Yeah.
So, like, it's kind of a really cold mix of having someone who sounds kind and someone who is actually really sinister. And he, at one point near the end, he kind of like tries to reason with the characters, like, you know, in a way that, I don't know, Robert Patrick kind of did that too. That kind of, it's eerie when you combine reasoning or being kind with something that horrible.
Yeah.
You know, I just think of him going to the door and showing the photo of John Connor and talking really kindly, and then at the end when he's saying to them, you know, you need to call to John and stuff. It's that kind of weird, sympathetic voice that's really weird in combination with something that is essentially a killing machine. The splitting apart thing I felt actually worked quite well. There's a bit like when one's driving a truck and the liquid metal guy is able to kind of go out and attack and do other stuff.
This bit's been in all the marketing for it, hasn't it? Where like they say the metal pole, yeah.
That's right, and I loved it. Really, really cool. There's just some lovely ideas in there. That's all I can say. When you're watching it, if you are a Terminator fan, just appreciate the ideas that they've thrown in. They're not that outlandish. It's not like, for me, Genesis felt outlandish, but this film doesn't overstep that mark. There's probably one or two points where you could consider it outlandish, but for me, if you think back to Terminator 2, those ideas are planted in that film. So yeah, I'd highly recommend going and seeing it. I think Tim Miller, the director, he's from Blur Studios, and Blur Studios create some amazing cinematics.
They do the cinematics for Halo sometimes. They did the cinematics for Halo 2 Anniversary.
That's right. Their work is incredible. Tim Miller is an amazing director, and it shows. So that's why I'm a bit upset that it's getting so much flack. And maybe it's just me, maybe it's my perception, but I'm really excited about this one, and I can't wait to get it on Blu-ray and watch it again. It does kind of end, it's a well-rounded film, and it feels like that's the end of the film. But at the same time, it does leave you wanting more. And this is something I've heard people saying about the film, is that they want more at the end of this film. And that's like the first time in ages where at the end of a new Terminator film, I've wanted another sequel. So it does feel like it could go on. And Tim Miller has hinted that there are aspects of the story that we don't know about. And he might go into in more detail in the next chapter. And apparently there's lots of deleted scenes as well that he's going to include on the DVD. So there are a few questions I have that I'm like, oh, how did they do that? And apparently a lot of it's in deleted scenes. So we might be getting either an extended version or something with deleted scenes. But I really wanted to talk about the movie because it is just so cool. And yeah, just go and see it. I was on the fence about it, but I'm really glad I saw it.
I find it interesting because there's a lot of talk behind the scenes. So both Salvation and Genesis, and now this film, it's been said were all meant to set up their own trilogies. So right. I think that kind of speaks a little bit to perhaps the problem with franchises in Hollywood is the fact that you can't just make a standalone film anymore, or it feels like a lot of the time people can't make a standalone film. It has to set something up for the future and have a degree of forward planning. And I think sometimes when you're kind of forced to do that and you're forced to approach it as, I'm not going to tell a complete story, I'm going to keep some threads here for the future, then that can be really detrimental to the storytelling. And I think especially with Genesis, because that felt like a really, really nice rounded film. When it ended, it felt like that should be it. That should be the definitive end. So to then have Skynet like survive on another sub-level in the debris of the building that they just destroyed Skynet in felt like a kick in the teeth.
Yeah, I can understand that. If you're a fan of Genesis, this is essentially, for me, felt like a redo of that film. And even like the ideas in it, there's stuff in it that I'm like, whoa, this is going to really, cheese off some of the Genesis fans, because it really does take the ideas from that film and do them better. That's what I felt. It's almost like Mark II Genesis. And, Genesis had some interesting ideas. I just felt that it was handled in a very mainstream, popcorny way.
Yeah, definitely.
That it's also in Terminator 3, although I like Terminator 3. Terminator 3 has this sort of popcorny, mainstream quality too, that Terminator 2 and Terminator 1 don't have. Terminator 2 is much more of a gritty, take no prisoners sort of action movie. And it's quite violent, and this brings that back. Dark Fate brings all of that back and really brings back the grit and the sort of the real sort of, it brings up, I don't know, when I'm watching Terminator, I feel like when they're fighting, you really feel like, oh god, get him, you get really angry about it. You're like, come on, get the bad guy. And I don't know, I just haven't had that properly in a Terminator movie for a long time. So it was cool to have that back again.
I'm going to go out and say it, and you probably saw I retweeted this thing the other day about doing a sequel to it. I really enjoyed Salvation. I thought, although it took a lot of missteps, it was interesting seeing kind of the fallout of the events in the first couple of films, and now actually exploring, well, what does this future look like? How do we eventually defeat Skynet? Where do we go from here? And while, like we were saying off podcast before, while yes, there are some things like the interpretation of Skynet that could be improved upon, I think there's a lot of really nice gritty sequences in that film. Like, one clip I always go back and watch on YouTube, I think it's on the Movie Clips account, is the sequence where John Connor comes out of the compound after the bomb goes off.
Yeah.
He sees the human transport leaving with all of the prisoners, so he runs in and jumps in a Bell Huey and it's like, let's go. Realises the pilot's dead, so has to push him out and then fly away. Gets shot down and then has to try and take a Terminator out with nothing but his pistol before he crawls into the rubble and uses the M60 it's mounted on the side of the chopper to take it out. It's just a really cool gritty sequence, and I think they could a lot more stuff like that.
I did like
cool.
that. I think that's probably that felt like it was trying to define a new genre, the future war genre, and I thought that was cool. Salvation, I would say, for me, the first half or the first 2 acts are better than the third act. When it gets to the Skynet stuff is where I feel detached from reality. But up until that point, I am enjoying the ideas that are planted in that film. I think, so something I said on WhatsApp to a friend was, this film, Dark Fate, what separates it from the other 2 sequels that we've had before is there's a story of redemption here, in that one character has been wronged by another character. Okay, I'm not going to go into who that is, but if you're
a fan of Terminator, you can work it out.
If you're a fan of Terminator 1, you have Linda Hamilton's character Sarah Connor is hunted by a Terminator, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Now you get to the second film and the Terminator turns up and she's like, oh my god, she freaks out and wants to kill it. Now what happens over the course of Terminator 2 is there's a story of redemption there for the Terminator, who is in fact good in that film, having to convince Sarah Connor that he is good, and basically the rapport between them, the friendship building up between them, and her trust in him building over the course of that film. That story of redemption is what makes Terminator 2 so special. You have the ending with Arnie going into the lava with his thumb up, and he's being a hero, and he's sacrificing himself. That is the redemption. The other 2 sequels, Salvation and Genesis, while they touch on it, they don't have that arc. And that's why this new film works so well for me, because it's true to that strength of Terminator 2. That story of redemption is in there. So you'll have to see for yourself. I won't spoil what that is in particular, but that same arc of redemption is in this film. And when I came to the end, it made me feel quite emotional, because I was like, wow, that's it, you've nailed it, that's the thing I wanted. And you don't even realise that that's what you want until you watch this film, and you're like, oh, that's why it works so well, Yeah. So that's my feeling on Dark Fate. But I do like Salvation's ideas. There's some really cool sequences in that, like the bike sequence, the Terminator bike sequence.
Yeah, that's really cool, where they're like,
and they come off of that big walker thing.
Right, one thing I really love is the sequence where Marcus first meets Kyle Reese with the Terminator. It's like a primitive version of the Infiltrator with the minigun. And he's like, yes. Is that a person in the distance? Hello. And then it turns around and you like see the red eyes and you're like, oh god, that's not a person.
Yes. Yeah, there's some really good ideas in it. It's just a shame that the story feels underdeveloped. It feels like it's got some really nice action set pieces and just things that are really cool in Salvation. Even like the battle at the end is kind of cool with John. It's kind of a cool sequence. But I just didn't like the Skynet stuff and the way Skynet was handled. Also, I brought this up in discussion with others, but there's a thing they do in Terminator Genesis and Salvation where they don't think deeply about the technology. If you think about a future AI and how it's going to actually operate, the scenes like in Terminator Salvation, for example, there's an endoskeleton that walks up to an entranceway and dials in numbers into a little number pad to make the door open up so that the endoskeleton can walk into the Skynet base. And for me, that's a real kind of like lack of deep thinking about the technology. These are like robots communicating with robots via a number pad that's an ergonomic human thing. And it would be like some kind of Wi-Fi or Bluetooth or weird signal that it's made up so that it can just let the robots, there'd be some sort of weird laser filter that doesn't let organic material through. Think about it a little bit more deeply than just having a endoskeleton type in numbers in a number pad so that the humans can get in as well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I just felt that was underdeveloped. And they did a similar thing in Genesis, where you have at the opening, you have endoskeletons driving human trucks that have been modified and they're cargo trucks, and it's like, okay, the imagery is cool because we've had Terminators driving trucks in the past, but the reason why Terminators drive trucks in the past is because they didn't have any other way to chase their victim. They're chasing them in a truck because that's all that's around. Whereas in the future, they're going to be flying around in hunter killers, or they're going to have their own tech that they've made up. It's an AI. I think
that's why the human
better.
transport in Salvation was so cool, because it's like a massive hunter killer.
Yes, I love the huge hunter killer thing. Yeah, the human transport was really cool, and the sound design was really good, if I remember rightly as well. Yeah. Like that whole idea was really well fleshed out. But yeah, Genesis seemed to sort of not understand the idea of this future tech very well, and showing these endoskeletons in modified human trucks just felt, I don't know, just felt like a lack of imagination for me. And I feel like with Dark Fate, Terminator Dark Fate, they go back to what the strengths were with Terminator 2. When you see images of the future, it feels sympathetic to what you imagine the future would be. So yeah, I think it's really cool. But enough gushing about Terminator Dark Fate. Go and see it in the cinemas. Let me know if you hated it. I'm sure there's going to be lots of comments down below. Of people who found this film jarring, but I loved it, and I look forward to its domestic release on Blu-ray so I can watch it again.
Cool.
Really cool. There's one sequence in particular, it's in the poster, but Mackenzie Davis has this chain with a hook on the end.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to spoil what happens in it, but it is so cool. I was like, yes, so cool. So when you see it, you'll see what I mean.
I definitely need to get on it and check it out,
Yeah, let me know what you think. I'll be really interested to hear what you think about this film, because and I went in with no expectations, so I have to be honest about it. If you go in with high expectations, I probably hyped it up too much now. But yeah, I did enjoy it, just everything about it. I think that's a pretty good place to leave it in terms of our conversation for today. We've covered a past world war, and we've covered a future world war in science fiction, and I think that's as good a place to leave it as any. So thanks for coming on today, Tom.
Yeah, no worries. And it's been fun.
Thanks for all your hard work, and do check out Tom's latest uploads, because he's done loads of cool content. And if you didn't know, Tom is now an official member of Jurassic Collectibles, so that's awesome, and you're going to be seeing loads more of Tom on the channel. I have to say, your photography is coming along amazingly. I'm really loving your photography.
Thank you so much, man.
Samples.
I've been really working hard, so I was really bothered with all my lighting setups. When I first started doing reviews on the channel, so actually since I started, I've bought a new folding table now, so I've got that white table for putting stuff on, and then I set up a folding background for it, so I think it's all starting to feel a little bit more professional. And I just discovered in my last review I did, so every review up until now I've done manual focusing. And I just found out that my DSLR, because it was really old, I thought it only has assisted autofocus, but you can actually set it up for full autofocus, so hopefully everything in the future will be even crisper.
Oh, wow, okay, so it's doing that automatically now?
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool. Oh, well, that's good. Well, I look forward to seeing that in your future reviews. Although I don't think it's bothered me too much, because when you're kind of focusing, you're tending to focus on it. You bring something to the fore, and then you say, I'm just going to focus in. I think that's a nice way to do it, because then you get to see all that lovely detail close up. And I have noticed your lighting is looking really nice as well. So great job there. So do check out Tom's latest reviews. I'm just going to read out. We've got the Amber Collection Ian Malcolm review. We've got the Legacy Collection Tyrannosaurus Rex, the Lost World version with the baby Rex. We've got the Dinotherium review from Eofauna, if you haven't seen that one.
And the Savage Strike. It's actually spelled properly.
Oh yes, no, that's cool. Don't worry about that. And then, that's what the fans are there for. They do catch us out, and I'm sure they're going to catch us out on a few things in this video as well. But the Savage Strike Plesiosaurus is up there as well as loads of the Snap Squad reviews.
Yeah, they've been really fun to look up. Can I tease quickly as well? I do have. So I've shot the Amber Collection Velociraptor videos that will be coming soon. We also have a look at the what words am I looking for? The Lego fossil set, which has just come out from Lego Ideas as well.
Oh wow, cool! So that's coming up.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I look forward to that, and I'm going to be continuing on with the display videos. I've been shooting lots of footage of that. I'm actually just waiting on some parts that I need to. I'm actually doing the racking. I'm glazing it with acrylic, with clear acrylic, so that it's got like a nice display cabinet look to it. So stay tuned for that video in the near future. I'm just shooting it as I go along. But yeah, I think that's a good place to leave it.
Cool.
Okay, guys, be sure to rate, comment, and subscribe. And we'll see you guys in the next Jurassic Park and REC.